Hey everyone, I'm Manny Valerio, and together with Brianna Spencer, we're doing our presentation this week on alternative education, Twin Rivers Education Center. So to start off, we should probably break down what is alternative education. There's a bit of a misconception when you look at the Merriam-Webster dictionary. It defines alternative education as an educational program or system that is separate from the mainstream educational program or system and that is designed especially for students with academic or behavioral difficulties. However, it would be more correct to reference the BC government's definition of alternative education, which states, alternate education programs focus on educational, social, and emotional issues for students whose needs are not being met in a traditional school program. An alternate education program provides its support through differentiated instruction, specialized program delivery, and enhanced counseling services based on students' needs. It's important to note that the standard public school system fails to tend to the needs of these particular students in numerous ways, and not simply to emphasize that they need to be in a different branch of schooling because of their needs. All students learn in different ways and need varying levels of assistance, some in more particular ways and requiring more assistance than others. Alternative education schools were created due to the inability of public schools to tend to the particular needs of these students. Why is alternative education important? Well, it's a more comprehensive outlook on education to care for the social, emotional, and educational needs of the students. It provides a support system for the students who are experiencing difficulties in their lives and difficulties connecting with their education in a traditional school. It understands that students cannot be effectively educated if they do not feel safe and comfortable in the school, as well as outside of the school. It's highly flexible to adapt to the individual needs of the student, with individualized education plans, or IEPs, or student learning plans being crafted for each student, instead of a mostly class-wide sort of blanket system. It understands that educational paths for students can be varied, but always strives to keep students on that end goal of graduation. It helps students realize that if they do not do well at a traditional school, it does not mean that they are not intelligent or lesser than peers that the system may work for, but rather the traditional pedagogy does not align with their individual strengths. Alternative education helps these students achieve their potential through tailor-made plans for them. So what is Twin Rivers Education Center, or TREC? TREC is an alternative education center, but it's not just one place. It's actually a combination of 9 different sites with 14 different programs. It serves approximately 1,000 students from age 12 to even 85 each year. They provide connections to over 50 different community agencies in order to support the differing needs of the students and staff. The staff at TREC believe that building healthy and trustworthy relationships between the students and teachers is at the core of their work. Being an alternative education center, their teaching methods are geared towards personalized instruction to hone in on the individual needs, more so than may be possible in a traditional public school. TREC's vision is, what we're doing here is important, you can do it, and we are not going to give up on you even if you give up on yourself. The model at TREC is impact, with I being infusing Indigenous and SOGI content throughout the curriculum and the school learning experience. M being making educational decisions based on our evidence. P being parity, moving closer to and achieving parity with Indigenous and non-Indigenous graduation rates. A, assessments at the provincial level matter. We will be there for our students to ensure they achieve their personal best. C, creating and strengthening relationships with all of our learners. And T, theory of action. If we, then we will see. So now we're going to play a little video. It's about TREC, and it's about some of the students that attended TREC and the various programs, their experience, and their testimony to how it worked for them. Hopefully it works.
School's not always easy for every student, and sometimes life gets in the way of students' progress. We really make sure that students' social and emotional needs are looked after so that they can be ready to learn. They feel good about themselves, good about each other, and ready to learn and engage in schooling.
Trek is a really good place to come if you're having troubles at home or if school's not going well for you. It's just an easier environment, a more supportive environment.
I believe like 2 weeks into working with my social worker at Allison. That's just the little things, really. It's like hey, you know what? I've been working on this essay for 3 weeks and I'm about to pull my hair out. And she's like, well, get in my office. I'm here. Just come.
When I first met her, she was living on her own, kind of actually, to be honest, unsure where she was living. So it was a matter of connecting with her, finding different paths to help her succeed in life. And like every young person, you try something out and sometimes your mind changes. So then the next step was going to our adult continuing ed school. And she's now aiming to be in nursing up at TRU.
I live up in Sun Peaks and I go to basically in a distance school where you're able to learn on your own kind of time through like online learning. Right now I am currently doing English and physics, but after this I plan on going into microbiology, and now this is my last year of school, and it's been great so far.
I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life before, but now I'm thinking something along the lines of science, something scientific. I came here and it's just a lot easier to get work done here, and you go at your own pace, so if you miss a day, it's not like the end of the world or anything. But if you want to get through a class in 2 weeks, you can at the same time.
And a number of students really feel quite anxious about going to school. So if we can front load that support for our students so that they feel comfortable, they feel safe, they feel cared for, and they feel that they're ready to learn, we can increase their chances for being successful. And when we have our graduation ceremonies, we hear time and time again from students and from parents that without all of those supports in place, they would not be achieving their graduation.
I procrastinate a lot because of my anxiety. And with the planning that she had, it was just a breeze for me, really.
At a regular school, you kind of have your own curriculum and you don't really learn how to be independent with your learning. And with at Cool, you really have the ability to take your own learning in your own hands and go from there.
And we basically individualize their education plan to help them feel successful and make that first goal, graduate. But then it's not just about graduating. We want to make sure that they're connected to their next steps as well.
She didn't just, hand me everything. She was able to get me this network of support that I could go to at any point in time with anything that I needed. And that would probably be the most grateful thing that I achieved from this.
Because once you know what you want to do, it gives you a different sense of passion and drive, and you thrive to succeed more in your classes once you have that end game goal of graduating and then what's next after graduating.
So that gives us a bit of a breakdown about what Trek can really offer. Like we just talked about, it's a lot of flexibility. It really tries to personalize the experience for each student to alleviate that sort of stress that they could be feeling in a typical traditional setting. Not really adapting well to the traditional schools, an option to graduate and, to think about their future in a way that they might not have done so if they were in a traditional school. So now that we know about alternative education a bit more, and we already know about traditional education because we've all been through it for the most part, we'll just compare the two with a Venn diagram. So alternative education is holistic. There's a focus on connecting with students on a deeper level. It ensures that support systems are available for every student that needs it, both in school and out of school. The social and emotional well-being are emphasized as much as educational achievement. There's enhanced counseling, personalized instruction to cater to the needs of individual students, individual education plans, or IEP, or a student learning plan is reviewed annually for each student. They tend to serve the more vulnerable and or at-risk populations in school systems. There's a specific intake process for students requiring district or self-referrals. There's a focus on project-based or inquiry learning at alternative education centers. Class schedule is more flexible depending on the school, with more potential to complete class away from the classroom. There's more focus on equity in alternative education, and all teachers share the responsibility for all the students that are in their schools. Whereas traditional education, it's beginning to make a shift to make deeper connections with students, but it's not quite at the same level as alternative education. It's a default for students to attend without a specific referral needed. Support systems are within the school, but less involved with providing support systems for outside of the school. There's class-wide lesson plans and unit plans. There's traditional methods of class instruction, with some others now being encouraged, such as inquiry-based. It's more common for students without behavioral issues or struggles at home. It's more rigid in the class schedules, and it's more focused on equality rather than equity. And individual teachers are responsible to help the students in the subjects or classes that they teach. Now, where the two overlap, and there is some overlap for sure, is differentiated instruction is definitely emphasized now. Social and emotional well-being at the school is always a clear goal for these two school systems. Teachers and student relationships are important. The importance of having the school as a safe space for all. Graduation, obviously, is the end goal for both traditional and alternative. And provincial assessments are still done both in traditional and alternative education. So with that, I'll hand it off now to Brianna, and she will take you through the rest of the slides until the end, and we'll jump back in to introduce the activity to you guys.
So these are Twin Rivers education goals. This is what the article was based off of. They set 3 goals for their 2019-2020 year, and these are the outcomes. These are how they've succeeded and where they might have fallen short. So in assessment, literacy and numeracy provincial assessments. If we have school-wide teaching and learning approaches to supporting each learner with the provincial graduation assessments, then we will see each student write these assessments successfully. Social emotional learning, connections with the outside agencies in their community. If we connect each student to at least one outside agency, then we will see our students have the necessary supports to be able to engage in their learning and to create deeper learning opportunities. So project-based and inquiry-based learning experiences for all students. If we create deeper learning experiences in every subject, then we will see the students pursue their personal passions and potentially realize a lifelong learning path. Provincial goals align with those of TREC. However, TREC applies them differently. So the same idea as direct instruction, but at TREC, they're applied more holistically and hands-on, adapted to the individual students. Cool. Nope. Oh, for goodness sake now. Goal number 1, assessment. Every student should acquire the necessary knowledge and skills through their coursework to be successful on the literacy and numeracy provincial assessments prior to their graduation. This goal was set in response to the 3 provincial assessments in literacy and numeracy and the challenges the students may face given the nature of their learning. Given that the literacy and numeracy assessments are no longer tied to a specific course, a greater emphasis is placed on all educators to support students in learning and development to be able to perform and demonstrate their best. TREC's approach to assessment relies on knowing, understanding, and applying effort to learning as to how their students will succeed on provincial assessments as individuals with individual strengths and stretches. Evidence of this goal. Students' test scores dramatically increased with the right tools applied. Students are recognized as individuals with their own strengths and stretches, and they were met with as individuals to discuss their own personal experiences and to validate student connections. Students' feedback is taken seriously and acted upon to consider the best possible environment for them. And parents recognize the work of the staff and teachers to provide the best education for their individual children. Strategies and initiatives to ensure this goal can work. Communication is key. Updating staff to adjust teaching for complete potential in student success. Developing teacher education develops student accessibility to knowledge and learning. And lastly, by developing and teaching with common language, students recognize the processes and expectations involved long before their assessment. And our little quote in summary. Our greatest accomplishment with this goal continues to be understanding that all educators at TREC are responsible for supporting the learners on these assessments, not just the math and English teachers. Movement towards common language will only help improve our students' successes with these provincial assessments. Goal number 2, social emotional learning. Every student will be attached to a relevant outside agency within 6 weeks of registration to support their social emotional well-being. It's important to note the word relevant. TREC's active involvement in the social emotional health of their students ensures every student has any and every support necessary for their success, including a variety of outside sources that they become connected with. Outside agency support for each individual learner is a critical component of not only the student learning path, but is required to be classified as a Type 3 alternative education facility. But being a Type 3 alternative education facility means programs must focus on the educational, social, and emotional issues for their students and support them in a variety of ways to reach the overall goal of graduation. TREC is connected to many outside agencies to be able to support each individual, including but not limited to drug and alcohol counselors, enhanced counseling services, Indigenous resources, and meal programs to ensure the most holistic and well-designed learning plan and environment to support the well-being of their students. It's important to note during this goal that mental health support and awareness for both staff and students continues to be an ever-present issue, and I think this can be said for many, many school programs, alternative and traditional. Some community supports that TREC students have access to are Interior Community Services, the Phoenix Centre, Ask Wellness Centre, Kamloops Aboriginal Friendship Society, the Secwepemc Family and Child and Family Services, United Way Thompson Nicola Caribou, Kamloops RCMP, Sage Health Centre, Kamloops Sexual Assault Counselling Centre, Boys and Girls Club of Kamloops, and the Kamloops Child, Youth, and Adult Mental Health. Evidence of this goal, again, students' assistance is no longer in their hands, though they can refuse a service. The pressure of having to ask for help is eliminated, and the services that are being received are tailored to their own individual needs as a learners and the individual lives outside of the school environment. By connecting students to outside agencies, students cope and feel safer in their school environment. Support staff have been integral in finding a supportive team for the students that best fit their learning and living. The goal is to best support the students' learning, but the approach that is being taken is one that involves the student's whole life, not just what they're learning or accomplishing in education. TREC connects students within 6 weeks of their entrance to the program. In the 2019-2020 year, TREC had over 200 students enrolled in just their alternative education program and was able to connect all of them with some sort of outside agency that supported their health and well-being. Their strategies. By hosting events such as the wellness or career fairs, enables the students to connect with other students, identify potential passions and jobs that suit their passions, as well as network and understand job requirements for potential future careers. TREC's ideologies set students up for continuing education and make the tools for success in a career accessible to them. The staff and supporters at TREC understand the value of outside agencies in the success of their students and continue to cheer them on, cementing the amazing work that they do and continue to do with their students. Most important is well-being and mental health. Beyond that, counseling blocks are mainly up to the students to use as they'd like. This is an opportunity to receive designated blocks and extra assistance to help them with their time management and project management or whatever else might be going on in their lives. TREC students are often substantially more affected by drug and alcohol issues as well as suicide. By having a trained counselor on site, educated staff, students can be monitored and maneuvered with the right tools and can be educated and counseled when necessary. Opportunities for students to have meals may be otherwise not present given in their home circumstances. By providing meals to students and accommodating their meals through funding when necessary, students have at least one guaranteed meal per day. And goal number 3, authentic learning. Every student will engage in a minimum of one project-based learning opportunity per course in order to meet the learning standards of the course. Implementation of the BC Education Plan allows students a unique opportunity. The BC Education Plan supports learning opportunities to dive deep into particular areas of learning. TREC uses a unique course plan that limits the amount of courses students take at a given time. Often students are taking 2 classes to allow for focused and complete engagement into these subjects without having to juggle information before they complete and move on to the next courses. Through project-based learning opportunities, authentic learning experiences will take place in every course for every student to help develop their passions. Coursework and projects allow students to explore topics that pertain to real life and real-life experiences and knowledge. Evidence, how this goal is happening. Students learn what they are interested in using an inquiry model, applying it to real life and learning to create their passions and interests. Students attending TREC are overwhelmingly Indigenous heritage. Place-based learning is of utmost importance when applying the First Peoples principles of learning, and especially important to impact Indigenous students. Students have freedom and are encouraged to learn about their interests and are more likely to succeed given their engagement and motivation. Students at TREC focus on 2 or so courses at a time, complete and move on, which is vastly different from the traditional education program, and allows students to fully immerse all their efforts into their interests in education. Strategies to help this goal succeed. Examples in their classroom settings are that which they see on provincial assessments, allowing students to explore real-life inquiry and successful knowledge development. Educators understand the value of student feedback in their learning. Students are giving you the answers as to their learn bests and what they need to succeed. It is the job of the educator to listen, and TREC is taking their students' feedback in consideration with their learning. Allowing students the opportunity to apply their learning to real-life experiences and vice versa, specifically in career education. And this summary reflection. So, authentic learning is not always readily available or received by our learners. Many of them would like to know what they have to do, get it done, and move on. TREC educators are working diligently by starting small to have the students understand what deeper learning looks like. This will be a process at TREC. And I think this can be said for a lot of education programs, is it's not readily received by our students, and they are just looking for the, what do I need to get it done? How do I finish it? I am, we all are, but I think this is such an important goal, is to understand why we're doing things and how they do have an impact on our future and on our real lives. This is a real life impact for you. I have a family friend whose son went to TREC, and she had a statement that she was willing to share with me. This is the reason my son graduated high school. After expulsion and a failed attempt at homeschooling, his last option was to enroll at TREC. He was not happy with himself that his last option was to go to the bad kid school. Once he settled in, we both realized that TREC was the school he needed to be attending, and we finally had hope and realized that he would in fact graduate high school. The teachers at TREC understand that all students do not learn the same, so they adjust their learning outcomes and their teaching styles to ensure every child is given the chance to succeed. That was really powerful. And lastly, our thought-provoking questions. So my question was, is this program being offered equitably and equally? And the first thing I had to understand was that these things are not the same. Equity and equality are very different. So not all programs can be offered equally. When it's offered equitably, students who need that extra alternative education get what they need in order to succeed and graduate. Ultimately, the end goal of TREC is to see graduation, and they do see those rates climbing as their students are being accommodated in this alternative education facility. Lastly is resource allocation. So not every student can have all these resources allocated to them. The ones who need them do. And not every child learns the same. This opportunity is unique for those who learn best in different ways, where different settings are applied to them, where it's a different environment. So It's not being offered equally, but it is being offered equitably, which is the most important factor when we look at equity and equality in education. And what stereotypes need to be confronted when offering alternative education programs for it to be fully implemented and accepted into our society. We all have our own biases. When I was in high school here, same city, same everything, but it was called the bad kid school. And those prophecies that we fulfilled on our students and on our peers became self-fulfilling, where students who went to Trek were thought of as a different way. And perhaps that had impacts on those students. In fact, it did have impacts on those students. So it's really important to remember that not all students learn the same. And we as teachers need to be reminded that accommodating students is not a challenge. Everyone needs it at some point in their lives, and we really need to appreciate that and move forward. So how do we change the way society sees education as a whole and the alternative options? I really believe it starts with educating, and we hope you learned a lot from this presentation.
Okay, with that, it's time to get to the activity. Throughout our presentation, we hope you learned that schooling should be holistic and hands-on, where every part of the student lives are taken into consideration and offered the tools they need for their success, not just in education, but throughout the many other aspects of their lives. Your job now is to come up with reasonable strategies to assist students in achieving these specific goals. Goal as in what, and strategies as in how. You may feel that a response to one of these goals applies to more of their lives outside of the school walls. We encourage you to post it. Every part of the student is accounted for, and the more avenues to success, the better the chance of reaching it. And here is the bibliography. So now just go to the link for the Google Doc on Moodle and start the activity and let us know what you guys think. Thanks, everyone.